Welcome all. I'm joined today by CivilNet contributor and analyst Tigran Grigoryan. So Tigran, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
I think a lot of things happened over the past few weeks which were quite complex and difficult to understand, and did get a big reaction though from certain sectors of the academic and analytic community in Armenia. The first one I want to start off with is Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's press conferences. He did two, but the first one got quite a big reaction. Even, I believe, the president of Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenian, released a statement pretty soon after the press conference. And it was really about the section of the press conference where he was speaking about the Karabakh issue. So can you explain why exactly it gained so much attention and why it was problematic in many people's minds?
Yeah, not just the president, but also the parliament of Nagorno-Karabakh issued statements on Pashinyan's press conference and some of the points he made during that press conference. Well, the main problem is that Nikol Pashinyan has been trying to instrumentalize the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict and to use it in his internal debate with the previous governments of Armenia. And in that process, he has been using some of the most prominent propaganda talking points of Azerbaijan, which have been existing for the last 20 years. And in this process, he sometimes makes some obvious statements, presenting them as some sort of sensationalist revelations. For example, he says that the Azerbaijani population of Nagorno-Karabakh also has right to participate in the referendum according to the Madrid principles. He says that according to all peace plans, they have right to participate, but that's a commonly known fact. Every person who has been engaged in the process or who has been following the process knows that fact. Then he draws a very, extraordinary conclusion that if the Azerbaijani population of Nagorno-Karabakh has the right to participate in the referendum on the final legal status of Nagorno-Karabakh, then it also has a right to hold its own referendum, which is like unheard of because it hasn't been in any of the negotiating papers, in any of the peace plans. So he draws extraordinary conclusions without proper knowledge of the content of the negotiation process, and he presents some commonly known facts as some sort of sensationalist revelations. That's one problem. He also makes some revelations, real revelations, and then also makes false conclusions about those facts. For example, during his last press conference on January the 24th, if I'm not mistaken, or 5th, he said that in the Russian proposals of 2015, which are also informally known as the Lavrov Plan, the point about the ethnic proportion of the people who had the right to participate in the referendum, according to the Madrid principles, the referendum must be held in Nagorno-Karabakh, and the ethnic proportion of 1988 should be considered as the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, like the 25% Azerbaijani population and 75+% of Armenian population. He says that that point was not included in the Russian proposals of 2015. Well, I did a small open source investigation. I compared this statement with all the open source data we have in different statements. For example, the Russian Foreign Ministry has issued several statements on the topic in the last year. There is also data in reports of international organizations. So it turns out that this claim is most likely true, that this point wasn't included in the 2015 Russian proposals. But then he makes a claim or a conclusion that because of the exclusion of this point from the negotiation package, then Nagorno-Karabakh lost practical opportunity or chance not to be part of Azerbaijan, which is not factually true, because the Russian proposals of 2015 and all the other later editions of these proposals were not more of conflict resolution proposals, but proposals which would freeze again the conflict, creating a new status quo. So the Armenian side would have to concede 5 of the 7 adjacent territories outside the NKO. It would keep the 2 territories, Kelbajar and Lachin, and the issue of the return of these 2 territories, 2 former Azerbaijani regions, Kelbajar and Lachin, would be tied to the issue of the referendum. So Armenia would still have a bargaining chip, a trump card in its future negotiations with Azerbaijan. So it doesn't mean that even without the point about the ethnic proportion of 1918, Armenia still would have possibilities to negotiate with Azerbaijan about the status issue. And of course, the most problematic thing is that Nikol Pashinyan uses Nagorno-Karabakh conflict in his ongoing debate with his political opponents, which is not prudent, because, I mean, this is an issue of utmost importance for Armenia and for Nagorno-Karabakh and for the security of the people living in Nagorno-Karabakh. And when you instrumentalize an issue of such importance for small political gains, it's not prudent, and it was quite expected that statements like the president's statement or the statement of the parliament of Nagorno-Karabakh would come, because, I mean, that's very natural. Another thing which Nikol Pashinyan tries to accomplish by making all these statements is putting responsibility for all the failures we've had and for all the possible failures on somebody else, like on the previous government, on the international community, and he tries to justify the softening of the position on the Karabakh issue with these so-called objective circumstances that have always existed or have been existing, let's say, since 2015, and which is also troublesome and problematic.
And another thing that got attention recently was a resolution put out by the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, which I know you noticed as well. The wording of the resolution, some people believed, was actually more pro-Armenian in certain ways, especially in terms of wording. So in your opinion, what was interesting about this resolution, and what do you think it may be signaling?
Well, the resolution overall was on the functioning of democratic institutions in Armenia. So the Parliamentary Assembly has noticed all the positive changes which took place in Armenia since the 2018 Velvet Revolution, but it also emphasized the shortcomings of the government and all the other problematic issues. So it's not a one-sided report as some political forces in Armenia try to present it. And there is also a point on the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, the 5th paragraph, and the wording in that paragraph is really positive. If we compare this paragraph with the previous report of the Parliamentary Assembly and the previous resolution of the Parliamentary Assembly on the humanitarian consequences of the Nagorno-Karabakh war, we would see the difference. The difference is clear. For example, in the first resolution, they even try to avoid using the term Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. In the draft resolution, the title was "The Humanitarian Consequences of the Conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan." So they avoided using the term the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. And only after amendments proposed by the Armenian delegation, they put the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict in the title, keeping the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan as well. So it was a very ambiguous wording used even in the title. In this resolution, in this paragraph, the wording is like very clear. Only the term the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is used, and we need to say that it corresponded to Baku's position about the end of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, about the need to even stop using this term, this wording. So the first resolution had this problem. The second, and all the problems in the first resolutions are entirely connected with wording. For example, they avoided to use the term prisoners of war, when talking about Armenian prisoners of war who got captured after the signing of the November the 9th agreement or statement. They were using the term captive. So it's more of a neutral term. In this paragraph, they use the term prisoner of war, which is also laudable, because lots of international organizations have also been avoiding using this term, trying not to irritate Baku, because Baku says that these people who got captured after the November the 9th statement are not prisoners of war. They are, I don't know, some sort of criminals or captives and so on. So it's also a positive step. And the final positive line in this paragraph is the line about the need to resolve, the need for just and lasting resolution to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. This phrase was last time was used by the Secretary of State Anthony Blinken during his meeting with the Foreign Minister of Russia, Sergei Lavrov. And this is an indication that there is a perception in the international community that the new status quo, which has been formed as a result of the Second Karabakh War, is not just, and it's not acceptable, and it needs to be resolved. And we know that Azerbaijan says that the conflict is over, and statements like this, that the conflict is not over, the new status quo is not just, are really, really very important.
And the International Republican Institute recently released its survey results, which had some interesting findings in it. I want to go through some of the areas of the survey and find out what you thought about it. First off, one of the questions was posing to Armenian people, to a sample group of about 1,500 people, what would you find an acceptable solution to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict? And the findings were the following: 35% said full independence, 34% said unification with Armenia as a region, 16% said the establishment of an autonomous region within Armenia, and 11% said status within the Russian Federation. So I'm wondering, when it came to that question, what were your takeaways from that?
Well, this is a very important data, because after the end of the Second Karabakh War, a narrative has been promoted within Armenia and by some forces outside of Armenia that the general public in Armenia is tired of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. It is ready to put aside the needs and the rights of the people of Nagorno-Karabakh and just focus on the democratic development of Armenia, on Armenia's modernization and so on. And the results of the snap parliamentary elections of 2021 were also sort of interpreted that way, that the Armenian public has accepted the results of the Second Karabakh War, accepts the new status quo, and is not ready to fight for the rights of the people of Nagorno-Karabakh or for the political rights of Nagorno-Karabakh. So this data shows the opposite, that the society is still concerned about the political future of Nagorno-Karabakh, that the society understands that any status within the Azerbaijani borders for Nagorno-Karabakh is not acceptable. I mean, I wouldn't go into much detail with all these responses, but the main conclusion is that the society is not ready to accept a solution which puts Nagorno-Karabakh inside Azerbaijani jurisdiction, because it has existential consequences for the population of Nagorno-Karabakh. And all the manipulations that the Armenian society is ready to give up, to give in, I don't know, and all these narratives which have been circulated by different forces inside Armenia and outside Armenia. And outside Armenia, I'm talking about the mainstream expert community on Nagorno-Karabakh, or some forces within the EU, they have been proven wrong. Of course, it doesn't show what cost the society is ready to bear to achieve these goals. We don't know about that. I mean, the survey, the poll doesn't show the point about the costs. But we at least know that the Armenian society still believes that the best solution for the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is a status for Nagorno-Karabakh outside Azerbaijani jurisdiction.
And second, another interesting area was the trust levels in the various state institutions of Armenia. Ranking highest was the Human Rights Defender's Office, and also, interestingly, the police. And most distrusted was Parliament and the judiciary. What did you think about that section?
Well, if we read this poll results, we would see that the main concern of the Armenian society, of the general public in Armenia, are connected with security issues. The borderline situation, the frontline situation, they are the top priority for the society. And the only institution which has been actively voicing concerns about the situation on the border, the security issues, has been the Office of the Human Rights Defender. He's been very vocal in this issue. His main work has been focused on that area. He probably even ignored some of his other responsibilities focusing on this area. That's why I think, and he's been very visible. He's on different TV channels, organizing different events, organizing press conferences and so on. So that's quite understandable why he's on the top. Police is a more peculiar case and a more interesting case, because police has traditionally been one of the most untrusted and corrupt institutions in Armenia throughout the years of independence. I think this change in attitude is connected with the reform, the patrol police reform, which has been implemented in the last year with the support of the US government and with tight civil society control. I think that's probably, these data probably shows the positive effects of this patrol police reform. The judiciary has always been at the bottom of all these polls throughout the years, so there is no surprise in that, because the judiciary is indeed the most corrupt Armenian institution. It's still, parts of it are still controlled by the former government, parts of it are controlled by the incumbent government, and parts of it tries to be independent. So the public trust towards the judiciary is expectedly very low. And Parliament, of course, Parliament, all these brawls taking place in the Parliament against the backdrop of dire security situation on the border, shows the inadequacy of that institution, and the level of discourse inside the Parliament also. I think lots of people understand that the Parliament we have and all the forces represented in that institution are not capable of delivering viable solutions to the, I would say, existential challenges we have today in Armenia.
Another question was three-pronged, asking Armenian people, who do you think is the greatest political, economic, and I believe security threat to Armenia? And I think some people were surprised that Turkey actually ranked #1 in all three of those, and Azerbaijan ranked second. Were you surprised by that?
I don't know whether I was surprised or not, but it is also quite understandable because in Armenia there is a perception that Turkey's role in the Second Karabakh War was much greater than Azerbaijan's role, which is, I think, a misperception which reduces actually Azerbaijan's agency and sovereignty. I think Azerbaijan played a major part, and Turkey, of course, helped and supported Azerbaijan, but Turkey's role is oftentimes overestimated. And that's the result of this overestimation by different expert circles, different political forces. Of course, Turkey played a crucial role in that role and a negative role, but I don't know, and probably the signing of the Shushi Declaration as well, by which Turkey guarantees the new status quo, becomes the guarantor of new post-war status quo, probably affected the public perceptions in Armenia.
And finally, there is a process of border demarcation and delimitation supposed to happen in the future. There was a section about that, and it was asking people how Armenia should conduct itself, and 25% said that any process of border demarcation or delimitation should happen after the Karabakh issue is resolved and a peace treaty is signed with Azerbaijan. 16% said when the Armenian army is restored. Another 16% said the process shouldn't be launched and isn't in the interest of Armenia and Artsakh. And another 15% said as soon as possible. So quite different answers in a sense. So what did you think about that section?
I think all of these answers are quite rational. I think some parts of the society understand that Armenia is a very weak position at the moment, and getting engaged in any process with Azerbaijan and Turkey without a capable military have its dangers. So that's why lots of people think that we first need to restore our military capabilities and then get engaged in processes like that. Parts of the segments of society legitimately think that this delimitation and demarcation process may result in signing of a document which could endanger the future prospects for the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict's political settlements, I mean pro-Armenian settlement. That's why they say we need to first sort out the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, which is not a realistic approach because it's not gonna be sorted out in the near future, and then do the demarcation and delimitation, but it's also quite a rational approach. The third answer, which was the third one?
The third one was until the Armenian army is restored. 16% said when the Armenian army is restored, then the process should start, and another 16% said it shouldn't be launched and isn't in the interest of Armenia and Artsakh.
Yeah, so 3 of the answers are more or less in the same direction, and
another 15 said as soon as possible.
Yeah, and that's also rational way of thinking, because the situation on the border cannot be considered as satisfactory, and we see all these incidents all the time, and it's quite rational to think that we need to resolve that issue. So different approaches, but the understanding of the dangers and the challenges connected with security is the same.
And finally, Tigran, the satisfaction rate for the Prime Minister's office, interestingly, actually dropped quite a bit compared to the last IRI poll. Why do you think that is? Some people were saying that it was interesting that after the war there wasn't as much as a dip in that whole period of time than compared in the last few months. So why did it plummet so much in the last few months?
I think it is also mainly connected with the security environment around Armenia, because this entire poll is about security. Like, security is the main concern. And the society probably understands that the government is not doing enough to provide the security of the country. The government talks the talk, but doesn't walk the walk. And there is also one issue. They participated in the snap parliamentary election, the ruling force, but with one agenda, and now are implementing a policy opposite to the agenda with which they participated in the election. So lots of people probably got dissatisfied. Yeah, these are the main explanation for me.
Okay, well, Tigran, thank you as always.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on CivilNet.